Are you looking for valuable business advice to reach that 7-figure revenue mark? Do you want actionable tips to properly navigate through every business challenge you encounter along the way? Let Tersh Blissett and Josh Crouch be your guide in getting you to the top here at Service Business Mastery. Tune in as they sit down with world-renowned authors in business, leadership, and personal growth who share valuable insights about management, marketing, pricing, human resources, and so much more. Let their nuggets of wisdom gold guide you in owning a thriving, profitable, and ever-growing business. Here are your hosts, Tersh and Josh.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast world. Hope you're having a wonderful day. It wanted to keep me muted for some reason.
We don't want to hear you talk. We're tired of hearing you talk. We see Tersh everywhere.
Yeah. You're listening to or watching the Service Business Mastery podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tersh Blissett, sitting virtually next to my co-host, Joshua Crouch. And today we're going to talk about triggers. That's a pretty common conversation we have on our podcast because there's
triggers of what?
Very often that I do things to trigger Josh, and more often Josh triggers me. So
I don't know. I think you triggered me twice before we even went on the air today.
Probably twice is not enough though. We're going to talk about triggering the thought and the idea of creating a brand refresh or refreshing your brand. And our guest today, Tim Leon, he actually has 9 different triggers that would cause you to think about and consider brand refresh. So we've talked about this a little bit over the past couple of years, and there's been an influx in rebrands in our industry, and it's been really exciting to watch. But Tim's going to talk to us about why and when you should do that, because there are times that I feel like a company has had the same brand for a long time and the company is a very successful company, and then I see them do a rebrand, and I often ask myself, I wonder why they did a rebrand.
How does yourself answer yourself?
And then self says, well, Tersh, this probably has to do with one of these 9 triggers that Tim's going to talk about.
Man, you must be hopped up on the good stuff this morning.
No, not yet. I actually am hyping myself up because I have a 4-hour drive after we end this conversation. So
you're going to get all the energy out now, and then you're going to be sleeping when you're on the road.
Yep. Set it on cruise control on auto drive.
Yeah, just get one of those Waymo cars.
Oh yeah, I wish it would drive me 4
hours.
Have it
drive you all the way there, just like ding the little alarm clock when you get there.
Mm-hmm. We're here. Cool. I'm excited to talk to Tim. And yeah, Josh, you want to add anything to this before we get started?
Just one quick thought, because we see these. I always go back to these Facebook groups because we see these conversations all the time.
Yeah.
And people think about that they should do something, but they really have no reason to. And when you're young and starting out, you're tying up a lot of capital in something that you may not necessarily need, or even if you have 1 truck or 2 trucks, you don't need it necessarily right now. Get to a certain point, get enough revenue, get some cash flow coming in your business. And then these triggers that Tim's going to go over, these can be the things that can really help you kind of decide, is it something that I should do or shouldn't do?
Yeah. Good job, Josh. Good job.
Where's the applause thing? Do we have the...
Can you hear
All right, this is going to be a fun episode today.
Could you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I couldn't hear it.
There was like a standing ovation there, so I was pretty impressed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get Tim on the show.
Hey, Tim.
Sorry about that, Tim.
That was entertainment. I don't know how we're going to top that, fellas.
Oh, we will. We will.
We will do our best for sure. Awesome, Tim. Can you do an introduction on yourself for those that don't know who you are?
Absolutely, Josh. My name is Tim Leon. I'm the president of Guile Leon Marketing Communications. We're a St. Louis-based branding and marketing agency, and I work a lot in the HVAC, home repair, construction area. listen to your podcast, and I'm thrilled to be a part of it today. Thank you.
So you've actually listened to it and you still wanted to be on it.
Hey, I need entertainment too, you know?
You
This
must
guy's
have
a
found
glutton
the
for
one.
punishment here.
You must have found the one good episode out of like 600.
It's probably the one you guys sent me, right? The
Yeah,
market.
probably. Yeah.
That's the one we send everyone, by the way. So that's like, oh, now I definitely want to get on because it's the only decent episode we've ever done.
Right. So Tim, what's your background, just so that everybody knows and understands why you are an expert in what we're talking about?
Sure. I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I've owned, my business partner and I have owned this firm, Gal Leon, for 30, going on 35 years.
Wow.
And so I feel like I've seen the evolution of branding and brand work. And these 9 triggers, we didn't just sit down one day and go, oh, here are the things. These are all things we've experienced and seen with our clients. And we've kind of narrowed them down to these 9, and they're universal, right? Across any industry. These are things to look for. So my background is in marketing. Like I said, my father owned an auto parts store, so I grew up in a family-owned business. We have a passion here at the agency for working with family-owned businesses when we can. So that's really what I'm all about.
Very
That's
cool.
awesome. Yeah. So obviously you got a lot of experience in the space and have been doing this a long time. What like current and future trends, what do you see in the marketplace? Because obviously there's a lot of stuff coming out with AI, and we usually ask some sort of AI question.
Oh yeah.
So like I've even seen people on Facebook go into like a chat GPT and create a AI logo, which some of them are actually pretty unique. But just curious what your thoughts are on how the technology is going to either make things better or the world's going to fall apart, or what do you think is going to happen with that technology as it comes to branding?
It's a great question, Josh. I'm actually here in Nashville in a conference with 12 other ad agency presidents from around the country. And we just got off a segment of our meeting talking about AI. The truth is, I think it's another tool, and I think there is some benefit to it. I think it's past its infancy. Let's put it that way. I mean, I would say most of the agencies today and marketing folks today, they're aware of it and they're at least dabbling in it. But I will tell you where I think it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of benefit as we try to do more personalized communication with customers. So follow up with customers, knowing their needs. We can plug all of your customers into the database. We know what services they use. We know where they live. And AI can help create some very, very personalized communication efficiently and fast. So I think you're going to see more one-on-one communication marketing efforts with AI. I also think you're going to, from a data gathering standpoint, marketers can really, really get data quickly through some of this. You mentioned chat GPT. There are a number of other platforms out there, but Jasper is another one I would encourage your listeners to look at. It's more about it for content and writing, but it's very, very good.
Yeah, and some of these, and where I'm thinking, so we're talking about branding, right? Because branding, I think the thing that pops into everyone's head is like, oh, the truck wrap, like what the truck looks like, right? That's the first thing that we think about, like what's the logo and the truck look like. But branding is so much deeper than that. Branding is so much more about the messaging, which I know we'll get into here. But having that, being able to train something on like how I want my messaging to be portrayed, and then give me back 40 social media posts or whatever the case is that focuses on what our brand is about, I think is really going to help people get better at selling their brand message. Because I feel like people get pretty logos and truck wraps all the time, but they have no clue how to bring their brand message to life through social, email, customer journey, etc. I don't know if that's what you see in the clients you work with, or that's like the next step for them after like they do a brand refresh or something. But maybe you can talk a little bit more about that and what you see after they get their logo refresh.
Yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, at our firm with our clients, it all starts with a brand platform and brand positioning. Like, to me, understanding your message, you have to do that before you get into the visual identity of your brand. I mean, because it can help drive what that's going to look like as well. And what I'm seeing is I simply defined a brand as an organization's unique claim of distinction. What is it? Why you? Why should I consider using your services? And what I tell people, a good brand positioning is ownable, meaning nobody that you compete against can own it better than you. They may say they have guaranteed service or guarantee after the sale, but if you deliver that better than anyone else, that to me is very important when you're positioning your brand. And secondly, it has to be relevant. And I bring up relevancy because that's kind of how we got to this discussion today about a brand refresh. We have observed since the pandemic changes in consumer behavior and attitudes. You guys both have seen it. I mean, think about everything you purchase. I mean, people's attitudes have changed. And what's happened is a lot of brands haven't went back and looked at how these changes in perception and attitudes impact their brand. So their brand loses some relevance. Maybe it's not as a compelling of a message. And all of a sudden, they're losing market share. So you got to come back and say, I want to be the most relevant brand. And being relevant means having a brand position that really, really compels people to want to pay attention to you and engage with your company.
Yeah,
How
and
do we
obviously
learn?
that.
How do we learn that though, as a business owner? Like, what happens whenever you have a business owner that comes to you and says, or you're having that conversation with them, and you're like, I don't know what makes us different. Like, I started my business because I didn't want to work for anybody.
Yeah.
I don't think
Or
that
I wanted
I'm
to
better
be,
than
or I
anyone.
knew I could be cheaper than the big guys
Yeah.
Yeah.
and still make money.
Yeah. I say sometimes, Tersh, that conversation, I think a lot of times maybe you have to kind of stay close to your customer. I mean, you have an opportunity every time you engage with a customer on a service call or whatever. Why did you call us? Who else did you talk to? Why us? I think a lot of times getting that customer perspective, and this doesn't have to be a big market research project. I call this conversational research. Talk to 10 or 12 customers, and don't just talk to the customers that are happy with you. Talk to customers that did, a lot of times you don't get chosen for the job. Why?
Oh,
Why
yeah.
did- And what you sometimes find is there's a perception. And you're like, how did we get to that? That's not, we're not, that's, I'm too small. Or I don't see you guys around town. And there's this perception that you learn about, and that may lead you down to how you're going to better brand and position yourself. I think your employees, another great exercise. Why did you come to work here? Your reputation and your brand also, it's the same brand that you're marketing with that you're also recruiting employees with. Like, who do you want to work for you that can represent you, and why did they come to work for you? Those insights can really be beneficial. I'll give you an example if you would like. We worked with a pest control services company here in St. Louis years ago. And you can say this about a lot of services. You guys kind of alluded to it. It's like, a plumbing service is a plumbing service. A pest control, everybody's got the same chemicals. The positioning, and it kind of came from what we heard from employees, is that in St. Louis, we have higher humidity, that we're kind of spread out, that the insects in St. Louis, we know them. So we don't just know about mosquitoes. We know how to treat mosquitoes in this market because it's different than other markets. So we came up with this line of we know pests, we know St. Louis, we know St. Louis pests, we know St. Louis best. The idea was we know how to treat pests in our market. Like there are things about our market that are unique, and that became the position. We know St. Louis best, we know St. Louis pests, and I think that's what you have to do. You have to dig a little deeper, and it doesn't. It's not always right there in front of you. And you guys were kind of alluding to it. Sometimes you got to get that customer and employee perspective to kind of identify how you want to position yourself.
Well, I know when, and again, we were much smaller when I came up with our name, and I know Tersh went through a coaching group to help with his name, but sometimes it's like a CEO driven thing where it's like, it's hard to explain what's internally inside of you.
Yes.
Like there's certain things and stuff that you want your brand to represent, but it's hard to like tell how do you put that into words? And I think like we did a core values exercise about a year and a half ago, and we used a lot of different feedback. We took some different words and things that our team used and then looked at our reviews, and we looked at some other things to kind of, okay, now we have this list. Now we start chipping away at it. And to the point of like, okay, these are the ones that really describe us best and are unique. And it was kind of an eye-opening exercise. We used it from the book Traction with EOS.
Oh yeah, Traction, absolutely.
Yeah, and it was a great exercise. And it's now figuring out, taking those core values and using those for all of your other things, because it's actually helped us recruit employees who weren't even. We had one of our web developers. She's a website project manager with us. She was looking for a friend for a job, saw our ad because it had that messaging and the core values in there. And even though she wasn't looking for a job, she applied, which is perfect. It's great.
Does she work for you now?
Yeah, she's great. She's done some really great things for us. So obviously it worked out really well in our case, but it's that messaging is so important. People do read that. Like we all think, hey, let's just copy and paste a job posting from a big competitor. Just like, just put a little spin on it. You don't differentiate yourself. People are like, I've read like 30 of these. Like this is the same company over and over again. Like I want something that's different and unique. Yeah, so I like that you brought that up.
I congratulate you guys, because I think having a core set of values and then actually living them out and expressing them when you're in recruitment, because you want to ask an employee, can they deliver on these values? And sometimes in the interview, you're like, maybe not, or yes, they're perfect. So that alignment of your values with your brand, that's very powerful. Not every company does that. So it's definitely powerful.
Good job. Yeah. Good job, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. That's 2 today. So Tim, when you were talking about the St. Louis company, so obviously one of the triggers, and obviously you gave us the triggers beforehand, was about expanding into different markets. Let's say this pest control company theoretically decides to grow and they decide to go to the next state over. Obviously, we know St. Louis best, or we know St. Louis pests, we know St. Louis best isn't going to work there.
You're right.
So do you want to start talking about some of the triggers in some ways that you start making those decisions and start having those thoughts, and you're like, maybe I need to do some sort of refresh on our brand?
Yeah, and before we jump into those, Josh, one of the things I think people think, oh my gosh, it's going to be expensive, it's going to take a lot of time. Do I really want to do a rebrand? I tell people it's kind of like, it's not a facelift. It's more like a facial for your brand. It's kind of just freshening it up, right? So I think people, they get a little nervous. Like it's going to take, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't have time to do all this, but
right. I can barely respond to emails.
But so I would just encourage people to, if any of these triggers, resonate with them, think about it, because it's probably time. And the ones, no particular order, but one I think your audience can relate to is a competitive threat. How many times in your market as a new competitor came in with a new shiny service guarantee or whatever, and all of a sudden they're chipping away at market share, and everybody's like, "Who are these guys?" You know, that's a wake-up call because in a lot of cases, um, you still have an advantage as an organization that's already entrenched in the market. But how are you going to reestablish your dominance, and how are you going to kind of quell that threat? So I think that's definitely a time to look for refreshing your brand. I talk a lot about shift in consumer behavior. We know a lot of research has happened since post-pandemic that consumer perceptions toward brands, attitudes toward brands changed. And everybody kind of thought, well, after the pandemic kind of dies down, it'll go back to the way it was. I think it's kind of a new normal. I'll give you a great example of this. There's a ton of research that shows customers are more loyal to companies that treat their employees well. So consumers are paying a lot of attention to how, if there's a bad press release that, there was a lawsuit, company suing a company for blah, blah, blah. Those things impact how consumers feel about the company. That I would argue that it's not as prominent. It wasn't that prominent, but it's more prominent today than ever. So, what does that lead you to do? Maybe you need to feature employees in your advertising. Show people actually, happy employees actually engaged and wanting to help the customer. So that's a biggie in my opinion. The next one's an obvious, but just outdated marketing materials where the salesperson comes and like, man, my stuff doesn't look as good as ABC competitor down the road. That's, in my opinion, an easy fix. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to change your logo, you have to change your name, but it's just a refreshed look that's more contemporary with the times. It's amazing. A lot of people kind of put it on the back burner, but to me, that's one that definitely.
When you're looking at outdated logos, is that an emotional thing or is it measurable? Because for me, something that I heard a long time ago, and once I heard it, I noticed it to be pretty much true, was the fact that once I was sick of seeing my own logo, the community was just now beginning to see it for the first time. Like you have to push it and push it and push it to the point where you're tired of seeing it, and then that's when other people are finally starting to notice it. What happens if you are the type of person that likes constant change? Like for me, the only norm, the only constant is change.
Yeah.
So like I get bored with logos a lot. And so I think that things are outdated, but in reality, other people are just now seeing it and they're just beginning to recognize it.
And that's a great question, Tersh. What I would say to that is let your brand positioning drive it. For example, if you decide you're going to kind of base your brand positioning on we're the most innovative, use the latest technology, blah, blah, blah. And then you look at a logo that you've had for 50 years and you go, that logo doesn't really match what I'm promising the consumer. Then I say you look at the logo, but I would tell you, you bring up a good point. That's not the first place to go, in my opinion, for a refresh. It usually starts with messaging. And when I say a new look, maybe it's the same logo. I know there's a lot of family-owned companies that have a lot of heritage with their logo. And if it's working, I have no problem using a 75-year-old logo. It's when the positioning is evolved and it no longer aligns with maybe what the look and feel is of that logo. That's when I would start looking at it, I think. It's a great question.
Yeah, and I like your point about the what some of the research post-COVID, because obviously it's really easy to create video content these days. I know it still doesn't get done by a majority of companies, but the thought process behind not because a lot of times, again, just with like creating the brand or the name of the company, the CEO or the founders, like I got to do it. So it's got to be me. And it doesn't have to be you. And honestly, we've seen some really successful companies in plumbing, HVAC, and electrical that they highlight their team. Their team makes TikToks. Their team makes different videos of things that they're doing throughout the day, like a day in the life type thing, which have been really successful. And people really resonate with that sort of video content and that sort of visualization of like, what the heck do these guys do when they're not servicing my house?
Yeah, yeah. I think getting a little of that insight of the type of people that work at a company can be very beneficial for a customer. Because, you know, they're in your home. You want people that you think like
they're likable.
It's a trust and a likability thing, for sure, man, for sure. You know, another interesting one I think is, and companies have seen that, you know, it's a generational thing, and you get a second generation of leadership, and maybe their vision for the company and where they're going to take the company is different. That's a perfect time to look at your brand and say, does my brand position align with the new vision of leadership? And I will tell you 9 times out of 10, it doesn't. That to me is a time to sit down with leadership and say, let's refresh this. So, you know, for example, plumbing company, we had companies in town. They started in HVAC, now they're adding plumbing or whatever. That changes the brand, right? If you say we're the HVAC company since 1935, well, all of a sudden you're more than that. So how's that going to get refreshed in your message? So we see that a lot.
That seems to be something that's pretty, I mean, because once somebody builds up a big enough customer base, there's a couple of ways to grow. Another market, more trades or more services. Yes. Sometimes it can be more services that you don't have to get like a license for, like air duct cleaning, installing generators, stuff like that. That's like ancillary where you can still do it. You don't necessarily need some of the extra licenses for it. But yeah, I mean, you get that customer list, and all of a sudden if you got 5,000, 10,000 people on a list and you add a trade, you can immediately, like literally overnight, boost revenue.
Mm-hmm.
You just got to have a plan. You can't just like, oh, hey, we're plumbers now.
Well,
guess what, guys? You now do drain cleaning.
We're doing some drain cleaning. So when your drain clogs up, call us.
Well, and you know, the other area there, Josh, we see, and I know you guys see, is 2 companies merging. You know, one of the growth strategies being I want to merge with another independent, build something bigger, or, you know, I want to sell. I'm done, but I want to sell the business. One thing people don't think of is, and I've got a whole talk on this that we give, but, you know, having a strong brand definitely enhances the market value of the deal you're going to make when you get acquired. And if you merge and you're the stronger brand, guess what? And we've seen this a million times. We've done a ton of merger communications plans in this industry. Guess what brand comes out on top? Like if we're coming together, let's keep so-and-so's name and logo because they got a great brand reputation. So I think when you start thinking that way, it's like the brand really benefits a merger or an acquisition, in my opinion.
Next, you have what's number 6? We've covered like 5 of them.
Yeah, well, we kind of covered this one. You're going into a new market segment, so that's kind of what you all were. You know, you're adding on duct cleaning or whatever, and that kind of changes your service offering. And sometimes that, to me, is something you want to pay attention to. Then the next one, it's a little different than outdated marketing materials. Sometimes it's just outdated messaging. Like, is your messaging resonating? Are you talking to your customer like they want to be talked to?
How would you know that? Like, that's, for me, I guess, how would you find that out, or how would you start to have that conversation or even that thought in your head?
I think for me, a lot of times your salespeople are key to giving you some insight into that. When they're out selling, they say, you know, I'm not closing as many deals, and then they start talking to, somebody that didn't go with you. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, you guys just kind of, there's nothing new at your company. I feel like you're stale. You got a great reputation, blah, blah, blah. Well, all of a sudden there's this light that goes on and you say, yeah, we don't feel like, we feel like just kind of, we're getting passed by. Like there's new technologies, there's new blah, blah, blah. And we're not participating in that. And the perception is we're getting left behind. Mm-hmm. That's a great example of where you want to come back to your messaging, a good example is, and I know you guys you see this, how customers want to be communicated with. Like customers like texting. They like, emailing used to be the thing, or calling. You can't, calling is like, I don't want an outbound call. Mm-hmm. Text me, email me, but don't call me. Those are things where if you haven't changed your processes, you adapt to how consumers want to get your marketing.
I can think of specific examples because I'll have like the dentist office call to like try to move me up and stuff like that. If I'm not on a meeting, I will try to answer if I know who it is, but I literally will not answer numbers I don't recognize, even if they're local numbers. Because a marketing company or someone could just buy the local number and pretend they're local. But what the companies that get my attention, the ones I remember the most, are the ones that text me afterwards, or they text me reminders of my appointments, or they're like, I can text in like the lady, I go to this place that it's like assisted stretching. It's called Stretch Lab. And the lady that I usually see is out today. So they texted me yesterday and said, oh, do you still want to keep your appointment? This would be this other gal. And I said, yeah, it's absolutely fine. Thanks for letting me know. But they texted me and I was really busy. I couldn't pick up the phone when they called. It makes a difference in people's mind to have the forms of communicate. Now, if you live in a market where everybody's 65, like it's a retirement market, make sure you answer the phone. If you don't, you need to have things like just have a text us button on your website, like just basic, like simple stuff.
You got to look at.
Okay, let me add that to my list of things to do. Add text.
I feel like when we talk about marketing, I'm always yelling at Tersh, even though I don't know I'm yelling at him. It's like he hears what I say and then he's like, oh yeah, I should probably do that.
Yeah, I should probably write that down.
I see Tersh writing these down, so there's action items he's taking at you.
Yeah. So we've actually covered 8 and 9 a little bit earlier, but I want to make sure that we list them out so that everyone knows what 8 and 9 are.
New geography. So Josh touched on that. You're a Arkansas-based company and you're going into Tennessee.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times there's an assumption that, well, what made us successful here? Well, I work with a janitorial cleaning service company that's in 13 markets. And in most of those markets, they come in, they're not known at all. It's a different strategy with the brand than in a market where you're well entrenched.
So I think, Tersh, you're going to that Florida Georgia game this weekend, right?
No, I'm not going to make it this weekend.
Okay. So what you're saying is like if you had a company that started in Florida that had Florida Gator colors, don't do business in Georgia because you're probably not going to be received well as that brand.
Will not. There's actually, it's funny because there is in the county that University of Georgia's in, or a county right next to it, they have 2 high schools there. One is the Georgia Bulldogs are the mascot. And the other school is the Yellow Jacket, and their logo looks just like Georgia Tech's logo. And so there's people who are Georgia fans, but their kids go to the school that have the Georgia Tech mascot. And so they have to put this Georgia Tech looking mascot on the back of their car window. And they're like, no, we're not Georgia Tech fans. Our kids go to this high school here. And so it's there's a lot of clarification going on there.
I love that.
So, Tim, we're wrapping up on it. We're running out of time here. Can you, for those who want to talk to you more about these triggers and branding and why you should rebrand, what's the best way for them to reach out and learn more about you?
I'll give you 3 ways to get a hold of me. If you go to my LinkedIn, it's Tim Leon, Guy Leon Marketing Communications. You can message me there. You can email me at tim@geileon.com. And finally, if you want those triggers, if you go to our website homepage, the pop-up window are the 9 triggers. And if any of those are resonating for you, I'm happy to chat. It doesn't have to be a sales call. So happy to chat with whoever about, how they might address their particular situation.
Awesome.
Cool.
No, this was great. I love the 9 triggers. I'm sure those will resonate quite a bit with the people that listen to this episode. They may be even considering it or have considered it in the past. So thank you for going through those today on today's episode.
I really enjoyed it, guys. And thanks a lot for having me on the show. I mean, I know I'm new to being on podcasts. I listen to a lot of them, but you definitely work hard at what you do, and the content that I listen to, I can understand why entrepreneurs like it. And the entertainment value. No doubt that's there.
Yeah, that's why we brought Josh on.
I thought it was our pretty faces, but whatever.
You guys both have a face.
I guess they have.
Yeah, you have a face for radio.
We do have a face for radio. Absolutely.
I don't know how they let us into these. Oh, you're just going to draw me out? You're such an ass.
Cool.
Oh,
if
man.
anybody has any questions,
Thank you,
don't
Tim.
hesitate to reach out to Tim or reach out to us. Servicebusinessmastery.com is our website. And yeah, until we talk again next week, I hope you have a wonderful and safe weekend. Keep me in your thoughts. I'll be rucking for 24 hours over the next couple of days up in the mountains. And yeah, I got suckered into that one. But yeah, if I'm not here next week, it's probably because I'm in the hospital. We'll see everybody later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Service Business Mastery. Now that you are equipped with essential business advice from this impactful conversation, you are one step closer to becoming the successful owner of your dreams. If this episode has been helpful to your business journey, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a rating, and share it with other owners as well. Visit servicebusinessmastery.com to learn more.